waiting times and waiting lists would come down. Let me now give him the figures. The figures are these. Inpatient waiting times, down. Outpatient waiting times, down. The number of people waiting more than a year, down to its lowest ever. The number of people waiting for 6 months, down to its lowest ever level. And indeed, the number of people on the waiting list. What he said was the clear test, that is down. That's what it proves about this Labour leader. Even when he moves the goalposts, he can't put it in the back of the net.
Every day he fights for this bill. Every day, trust in him on the NHS ebbs away, and every day it becomes clearer the health service is not safe in his hands.
What's your commitment on EMAs? And if you do plan to axe them, what would you do to cover the financial loss that would occur to these people with very poor background?
Very good question. We've looked at educational maintenance allowances, and we haven't announced any plan to get rid of them. They do often, if you go to schools and ask people what they think of them, and ask young people themselves, they get quite a mixed reception actually, because some people can see them as a bit divisive. But no, we don't have any plans to get rid of them.
So you're committed?
I said we don't have any plans to get rid of them.
Cameron and Michael Grove said that they will not scrap educational maintenance allowance, but October 2010, in Audubon's spending review, it was announced that EMA would be scrapped. Lots of students like me will be in debt before we even graduate.
Is any cabinet minister, if we win the election, who comes to me and says, here are my plans, and they involve frontline reductions, they'll be sent straight back to their department to go away and think again.
But official figures show that police numbers in the 43 forces in England and Wales have fallen by 9,625 since the general election, and more than on track to meet reliable estimates that the current round of public spending cuts will lead to a loss of at least 15,000 officers by 2015, and will probably be nearer 16,000 fewer police. The report, based on the detailed investigation of individual forces' plans, estimates that 16,200 police officers will be cut between 2010 and 2015. From Downing Street, the march moves towards the Houses of Parliament. This march was supposed to be peaceful, but the news came through in the morning that there were riot police waiting for us outside Parliament Square, and everyone was saying, where were the police during the London riots, which cost millions of pounds in damage? Why were their police not there when we needed them, as they were not needed at their peaceful march?
I mean, last year when I came here, I have honestly never seen so many police riot vans, so many police. They were shoulder to shoulder all around Trafalgar Square, shoulder to shoulder. We were being filmed. We're a peaceful protest, but I believe the time is coming when the ordinary citizens will rise up, because it can't go on like this. If peaceful demonstrations are firstly ignored and then demonised, people are going to turn around and do something about it.
Just like David Cameron lied his way through to becoming Prime Minister, the same lies were told to the public by the Conservative Party as well. Well, let's start another one, the lies they have told public just before the 2010 elections.
We've said very clearly, no plans to increase VAT. We're about trying to get spending under control rather than putting up taxes.
Before the election, the Conservatives repeatedly denied that they had plans to raise VAT. David Cameron said that we will not raise the VAT. After the Conservatives won the election and Cameron was selected as Prime Minister, the news came through.
On the 4th of January next year, the main rate of VAT will rise from 17.5% to 20%. The years of debt and spending make this unavoidable.
If that's what politicians and their parties will do to get into power, then people have the right to stand in front of Parliament Square and protest against the people who hide behind their police-guarded parliaments while corrupting the government and making their life hard for the ordinary people.
I just come from Buckingham Palace, right, the Queen's house, and had dinner with them lot, right? They're a bunch of rich elites, and it's like, that place is the reason why we have poor people on the streets. Get all the rooms in Buckingham Palace, about 400 rooms, put poor people in Buckingham Palace who don't have homes. There you go. But it's places like that, and it's all going wrong. It's all going wrong, but we're here to show that we have the power.
Next stop, Buckingham Palace. The people from the march were saying, if we have a government already, then why do we need a queen and a royal family? It's just a tourist attraction and nothing else. Recently, on the 21st of March, Anonymous broke the news that a royal member of the family was involved in the VIP paedophile ring, which was also including celebrities and MPs.
Child abuse survivors want the timescale of the inquiry into VIP paedophiles pushed back to the 1950s to avoid a whitewash. Groups representing the abused also want a dedicated police unit to examine evidence uncovered during the probe to ensure no powerful culprits escape justice. However, victims' calls fell on deaf ears, and May snubbed sex abuse victims for a trip to Brussels. She skipped the emotional meeting where victims were demanding that the troubled historical abuse inquiry starts as soon as possible. She had already warned that allegations of child sex abuse by a Westminster paedophile ring represent only the tip of the iceberg.
Just a reminder, the royal family is granted absolute protection from public scrutiny in a controversial legal reform designed to draw a veil of secrecy over the affairs of the Queen, Prince Charles and Prince William. With the elite paedophile ring now being exposed in the UK, all roads are leading to the British royal family. Some claim this law was passed to keep this connection hidden, but as we now know, Prince Charles's favourite was Jimmy Savile, who is the biggest paedophile and necrophiliac in modern British history.
A teenage boy working at Buckingham Palace revealed he was groomed and sexually abused by a VIP paedophile ring there. The lad was also assaulted at the royal family's Scottish retreat Balmoral. In a heartbreaking note, the boy, then just 16, told how he was the victim of exploitation of the highest order. The disturbing account was passed directly to the then Home Secretary Leon Britton, but he ruled it was not practical to investigate. Palace officials have already been linked to the notorious brothel, the Elm Guest House in southwest London. It was first in 2008 that news about deep roots of paedophilia inside Buckingham Palace emerged. Former Buckingham Palace butler was unmasked as a sexual predator who ran a paedophile ring while serving the royal family. Bachelor Paul Kidd, 55, was leading a secret double life as a serial child abuser who molested a string of boys over a 30-year period.
Well, it seems that in Great Britain, protecting paedophile politicians is now turning to a matter of national security. Those with the sickest minds and who wish to act upon their destructive fantasies understand that they can most easily get away with their deeds if they are protected by an aura of power and ostensible respectability.
Last stop for the march was the BBC. They are one of the main sources wiping the minds of this generation by not showing them the truth. This goes not just for the BBC, but for most of the media channels. Recently, the Gaza conflict that was left more than 1,000 dead and more than 10,000 people homeless was seen on the BBC, trying to defend Israel with their biased reporting.
The shocking propaganda campaign by the BBC contained in programmes like Conspiracy Files, Conspiracy Road Trip, which is the most abhorrent, odious bilge that's ever been constructed by a TV company, and I say this as an ex-BBC employee. It's absolutely childish, disgusting, horrible, I can't think of the adjectives, that is so unscientific, so unfair, such blatant propaganda, that on that alone you shouldn't pay your TV licence. If you have a TV licence, why? You are funding your own downfall. It is absolute social suicide. Stop doing it. Stop doing it.
In 2009, the BBC sparked outrage with its refusal to air a British charity appeal by the National Disasters Emergency Committee during Israel's attack on Gaza.
People will die because of the BBC decision. Let me be clear about that.
2 years later, BBC Radio censored the word Palestine live on air when a rap artist tried to say the words Free Palestine. And that is just a sample of many incidents where the BBC's management failed to uphold principles of impartiality.
While people can complain, their complaints will be heard by the BBC Trust, unlike all other UK broadcasters who have to answer to the British media regulator, Ofcom. And so the British Broadcasting Corporation is funded by the UK taxpayer, but is accountable only to itself.
The BBC, which is funded by public opinion, or the public who have that opinion, really ought to wise up, because your role as the wartime propaganda mouthpiece
George Galloway,
is really infuriating people,
just you
the
being
length
deliberately
and breadth
provocative.
of this country.
Let's get back to the substance.
You're going
of
to
the
lose
issue.
your licence fee over this.
Well, you don't have to threaten me.
The BBC is not reporting anything that represents the people of this country.
Well,
I've been thrown out of the BBC and everything just for speaking the truth. The BBC don't like the truth. You're sucking the cock of the establishment, and that is it.
I do show it on the TV, and the problem is that you've got a lot of people on peaceful protests, and they will show the small outrages, the outbreaks of violence, which would last 20 to 30 seconds before the police and members of Occupy and Anonymous jump in to break it up. And we're not about violence, we're about peaceful protesting to get our messages across. And what the BBC and the mainstream media would do is take these small snippets of fighting and outrage and blow it out of proportion and say, look, these people are bad people, yeah? So that they're trying to make us fight against ourselves. And really, we should be all listening to one another and make the place a much better place.
August 2013, and NATO leaders can't get the public on side for the imminent bombing of Syria. Suddenly, the BBC says it was filming a small rural hospital, and a game-changing atrocity happens right there, the moment they were filming.
Last month, we were filming the doctors working at this hospital when victims of an incendiary bomb attack on a school playground started pouring in.
Absolute chaos and carnage here. It must be some sort of napalm.
But a highly sceptical public stayed hostile to military intervention. Exactly 1 month later, the leaders are trying to pin a chemical weapons attack on Syria without success. The BBC airs exactly the same footage but digitally alters the word napalm for, quote, chemical weapons, hoping no one will notice.
Absolute chaos and carnage here. It must be some sort of chemical weapon.
Not only did folks notice, but it unleashed a massive public investigation, which made some extremely disturbing findings.
This is the total fabrication. From beginning to end of an atrocity with BBC reporter Ian Pannell standing amidst a tableau of very bad actors. This is completely beyond the pale.
This audio analysis by media investigator Robin Upton shows both versions are identical and from the same speech. The BBC then digitally altered the words from napalm to chemical weapon, the exact justification NATO was finding difficult to prove.
The media in Britain, I believe, is in the pay of the government. The only media outlet that shows anything about anything like this is the Russian television, and they give us a little bit of coverage. Last year there had to be 3,000-4,000 of us here on the 5th of November for the Million Mass March. No coverage whatsoever. You might get a little mention later, and that's about that. Yeah, there is so much going on. You've got austerity measures being brought in, but it's the 99% of the people, the poorest, that are being made to suffer. Nobody in government's suffering.
Million Mask March. This is a global march of solidarity against political and economic corruption in 477 locations across the world. There were marches in every inhabited continent of the planet. Where were the BBC?
Another enormous issue that the BBC has barely covered is the US-EU trade agreement, the TTIP. It's a sort of evil twin of a thing called the Trans-Pacific Partnership that's being negotiated across the world as well. And these are basically agreements that are designed to have secret corporate tribunals make decisions about how our economy works. Any regulation that a government puts in place to give rights to people, to protect the environment, anything that might make the costs that corporations have to cover greater, the corporations under these agreements can sue the governments for billions of dollars.
I'd just like to ask the BBC why we would report on the £1.2 billion worth of benefit fraud when we're not actually reporting on the £120 billion worth of tax evasion.
The NHS marched. 60,000 people marched the Tory party conference in Manchester. Where were the BBC?
Mainstream media is telling you, like Fox News is telling you, that global warming doesn't exist. We all know global warming exists. So clearly they're working with the mainstream media, BBC, ITV, they're meant to be impartial sort of news websites. But what they're doing is they're giving you an agenda, but less and less people are trusting them. Less and less people are trusting the newspapers. Daily Mail, they during World War II, Daily Mail were in favour of Hitler. So as history's gone on, we've learned not to trust these people. The real news is anonymous. The real news is a retweet of, like, you know, stuff like this. That's what the real news is.
400 Palestinians are...
An appeal has been filed by the Palestine Solidarity Campaign and Friends of Al-Aqsa to try and get the BBC to explain whether it's justified in referring to Jerusalem as Israeli. In a case that's been ongoing since 2012, campaign groups have complained to the corporation's trust, the Information Commissioner's Office, and had a Freedom of Information request rejected. But they've vowed to fight on to prevent further misinformation.
Of course, Jerusalem isn't an Israeli city. It's divided at the moment. East Jerusalem is recognised by the United Nations international law as occupied Palestinian territory, and Israeli de facto control is only recognised over West Jerusalem. So for the BBC to refer to Jerusalem in its entirety as an Israeli city is inaccurate journalism, and it's also completely wrong under international law.
This controversy is not the first time BBC coverage and the corporation's editorial policy have been challenged by pro-Palestinian organisations. In fact, they've argued that for years the BBC seems intent on aping the official line coming out of Tel Aviv, leaving very little space for the Palestinian narrative. In 2011, producers censored the lyrics to a pro-Palestinian rap, editing out the word Palestine. The BBC, with the largest audience share in the UK and publicly funded, has a remit to remain impartial.
When you keep putting ideas into people's heads, Jerusalem is Israeli, Palestine isn't occupied, this isn't an occupation, it's a conflict, it's a war, the Palestinians are fighting the Israelis. Propaganda wins, it wins wars, misinformation wins wars. When journalists at the BBC are just spouting Israeli propaganda and refusing to correct it, and the BBC trusts the highest level you can get to at the BBC is backing them up, then you know that something is very, very wrong.
The editor of BBC News Online. Now, during the assault, the 8-day assault that Israel perpetrated on the Gaza Strip just a few years ago, in which hundreds of Palestinians were losing their lives, Rafi Berg was emailing BBC journalists to give them guidance on maintaining a pro-Israel stance in their reporting. An electronic intifada had provided a wonderful report on that you can read online. Now, the Director of News and Current Affairs at the BBC is a former employee of the Murdoch Press. He's a man called James Harden. While he was editor of The Times, this is his last job as editor of The Times, he outed the identity of an important police blogger called Nightjacker. And it was discovered that he'd found the blogger's identity by hacking his emails. His lawyers then covered up this fact in the subsequent court case. This is the person in charge of hiring news reporters and shaping the editorial content of BBC coverage on hacking and privacy. He's also on record as being pro-Israel, so you can attest to that fabulously unbiased coverage of Middle East issues that the BBC provides.
The thing about Anonymous is we're from the internet. We come from the internet. We know how to use tools and we know how to get information out there. So I was at the Gaza protests. I was at 3 of them, and they exponentially grew each week to 150,000. And you're marching outside the BBC, and they didn't want to show anything. They didn't want to show anything at all because they can't show that amount of people out in the streets. Is there going to be press coverage today? Very, very minimal. If we do, it'll probably be from RT or maybe from Al Jazeera. But for me, this is a case of an easy thing for us to do. We have social media. We have hashtags, we have Twitter, we have Facebook. We can take our own media back. We're making our own media. Look, I'm talking to you right now who's making our own media. We're that change. They won't stop a message getting out. You can't crush an idea, and that's what Anonymous is. It's an idea.
Before that, a march against austerity happened in central London. There was media coverage from other channels like Al Jazeera and RT, but not the BBC. Later, when someone tried to call the BBC, this is what happened.
Hi, Mike again from the Sick Britain. Oh, we've got some more tweets coming in there. Sorry about that. Right, I'm just about to phone BBC News 24, the 24-hour rolling news channel, as to why we're not seeing any news stories concerning the demonstrations in London today. It's the 21st of June. Up to 50,000 people rallied up in London around Parliament today. And we've heard nothing on the BBC or Sky News. But I'm seeing reports on foreign news channels such as Al Jazeera and Russia Today. So I'm just a bit miffed. Well, not miffed, I'm just puzzled really. As to why the BBC feel that it doesn't warrant any report at all. So let's try and give them a ring. Now, first time I got through to BBC Radio London, or LDN, whatever they call it now, and I got through to their editor and posed the question and had the phone slammed down on me. So might be getting an idea as they don't want it out in public knowledge. Okay, let's give them a call. Let's see if we can get through. If not, I'm going to pause it and multiple numbers I've got here. So.
Good evening, BBC Switchboard.
Oh, good evening. Can I speak to someone in the news editorial, please?
News editorial. What's the call regarding that?
It's regarding a news story.
Right, so you're a member of staff?
No, no.
So what is the news story that you sent to announce the call, you see?
Well, it's to do with the demonstrations in London today. Apparently there's up to 50,000 people demonstrating in London. I'm seeing it on foreign news channels such as Al Jazeera and Russia Today, but doesn't appear to be anything at all on the BBC.
I'll see if I get you through to the BBC London news team now.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Ring a phone out there.
Sorry?
Starling for you.
Oh, thank you very much.
No problem.
Could be on a BBC tea break. Ah. Hello? Hello? Anyone there? That's exactly what happened to me when I telephoned BBC Radio London. So, they're obviously, the Ministry of Truth doesn't want to report the real truth. They're reporting government truth. And that's the response you'll get from the BBC. That's my second call. I thought I'd record this one because the first one, I just made a haphazard call to Radio London or LDN and was surprised that they just put the phone down. So there you go. That was BBC News 24. I suggest if you want the telephone number, it's 020 8743 8000. That number again, 020 8743 8000, and I suggest as many people as they can call them and ask these questions. They need to know that we are watching them.
But the question is, why the BBC didn't report anything about the children killed in Gaza? One of the most striking images I saw was this. 4-year-old girl Sarah Sheikh Al-Iyad. Her mother is saying her goodbyes after she was killed along with her father and uncle in Israeli military strike the previous day, during a funeral in Rafah in the South Gaza Strip on July 15th, 2014. Just 2 weeks after her death on the 29th of July was the day of Eid. This is when Muslims celebrate the ending of Ramadan with their families and friends, but for Sarah's family it will be an Eid like no other. This is my niece. By the time you watch this film, she will be 2. Now, after doing the research for the documentary, I have found out things that I didn't know before. This has made me think it's really safe in the world and everything that is happening in my lifetime. Will it affect her in the future somehow? If we need to make futures better for our children, it won't happen by just sitting down and doing nothing. Please share and make your voice heard and let people know that we are 99% and we will not let the 1% of these people control us.
Why won't you die? Beneath this mask, there is more than flesh. Beneath this mask, there is an idea, Mr. Creedy. And ideas are bulletproof.